Good day and welcome to another cubic function lesson with Mr. Simons. Now here we're doing corrections for number 1 and 2 of worksheet 1,14 foundation practice. In the first two problems that I'm doing looking at using substitution to find factors. Then in the other video solutions we're going to look at points of contact, gradients of tangents, etc. Alright. Now with sufficient practice you should be able to score 2 to 3 marks. So either in exam we'll definitely test some form of substitution. Points of contact, gradients, it's technically a compulsory exam question under cubic function, right? Now if you go under the description here in YouTube, you will find the link to the full worksheet, and there's a worksheet memo, and the video solution is extra for if you're not understanding what is written there. Alright, so now let's first look at the clues and triggers that we need to understand. So what to look out for before we start solving. Number one, we must be able to identify triggers. Alright, so trigger words that when you read the question should trigger you. Determine F2, there 2 is in a bracket, so we're testing can you substitute. Find the value of f negative 1, so we've given you a value in the bracket. Again we're testing substitution. Show that f3 equals 0. Evaluate the function, substitute in the function. So immediate thought that should go through your head. If the question says f2, it means substitute x equal to 2 into the original equation. Golden rule, fx gives points, values, coordinates, right? So when I substitute in the x value, I get the y value, and therefore I have the coordinates for x and y. For points of contact, so once we use the word points of contact, so trigger word point of contact, touches the graph, tangent touches the curve, line is a tangent to the curve, touches at one point, immediate point, at the point of contact, we have the same point, same gradient. Right, golden rule for points of contact, we're always going to use first derivative of x to get the gradient or slope and substitute whatever they've given us in. Right, final warning, right, you lose marks because you substitute in the wrong formula. So you need to understand when we're substituting in the original equation and when we're substituting into the first derivative. So for points, we substitute in f of x. For gradient, we substitute into the first derivative, right? So now let's look at function notation and substitution, problem number 1 and 2. The rest will be done in the other videos and so on. And as I said, everything is linked in the description under YouTube where the video is uploaded, right? Given f of x equal to 2x cubed minus 3x squared minus 11x plus 6, determine the value of f negative 2. Right, so instead of saying f of x, they gave us f negative 2, so they're technically telling me that the x there is going to become negative 2. So straight out substitution, in place of x I put negative 2, so that becomes negative 2 cubed, negative 2 squared, negative 2 plus 6. Negative 2 cubed gives me negative 8 times 2 gives me negative 16. Negative 2 squared gives me 4. 4 times negative 3 gives me negative 12. Negative 2 times negative 11 gives me positive 22 plus 6. 22 plus 6 is 28, minus 16 minus 12 minus 28. Minus 28 plus 28 gives me 0. So 1 mark for substitution, 1 mark for correct answer. Now if you remember from the previous worksheet, if the value equals 0, this means that this is a root. So therefore x plus 2, the sign always changes, is a factor. Alright, so we got a factor. Now technically from there we can ask factorization. Determine the value of f of x equals 0. So now we want to find the x-intercepts where y equal to 0. So x plus 2 is a factor. So x times what would give me 2x cubed? X times 2x squared would give me 2x cubed. 2 times what would give me positive 6? 2 times positive 3 gives me positive 6. I must get minus 3x squared. So if I multiply there first, I have 2 times 2x squared, which gives me 4x squared. So to go from 4x squared to minus 3, I must say 4x squared minus 7x squared. Therefore, x times minus 7x gives me minus 7x squared, plus 4x squared gives me minus 3x squared. So 1 mark for correctly getting the quadratic equation. Then another mark for correctly factorizing. So that becomes x plus 2. 2 is a prime number, so it becomes 2x times 1x. 3 is a prime number, so it becomes minus 3 times minus 1 to get positive 3. Again, we multiply the 2 furthest. 2x times negative 3 gives me negative 6x minus 1x, which then gives me minus 7x. So that's my first 2 marks, but we have to determine the x-intercepts because y is 0. So x-intercept y equal to 0, x plus 2 equals 0. Take 2 over, x is minus 2. 2x minus 1 equals 0. Take minus 1 over, it becomes positive 1. 1 divided by 2 then gives me half, or take minus 3 over and it becomes positive 3. So third mark for correct answers. Take note, they didn't ask for coordinates, only the values of the x-intercept. So those are my 3 values. All right, let's go to problem number 2. Given f of x equal minus x cubed plus x squared plus 16x plus 6, determine the value of f negative 1. So we want to know what's the y value when x is minus 1. So in place of x, I'm going to place minus 1 cubed minus 1 squared plus 16 plus 16. 16 minus 1, 0. 1 minus 1, 0. Right? So x plus 1 is a factor. 1 for substitution, 1 for correct answer. Alright, so I hope you follow. Right, and then from there, because minus 1 is a root, x plus 1 is a factor. Now we're going to factorize. So again, x plus 1 is a factor. X times, what would give me negative x cubed? That there, x times negative x squared would give me negative x cubed. Then 1 times 16 would give me 16. There I have minus x squared. I want 1x squared. So therefore x times 2x gives me 2x squared. Minus 1x squared gives me x squared. So there we factorize and we have minus x squared plus 2x plus 16. Right, we have to get the x-intercepts because according to what they give me there, y is 0. So x-intercept, y equal to 0. So x plus 1 equals 0. If I take 1 over minus 1. Now the second part, very common in exam. I have minus x squared plus 2x plus 16 equals 0. I can't factorize or use the factors of 16 to get to 2. So I'm going to be required to use the quadratic formula. So it appears a lot. So the x equal minus b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a, my quadratic formula. From there, plus 2 in the place of b, then a place of b plus 2. The a value there, minus 1, so that's minus 1, and the c value, 16. So that gives me 4. 4 times 16, 64 plus 4 would give me 68. So minus 2 plus minus square root 68 over negative 2. If I use my calculator, I get x equal minus 3,12 or x equal 5,12. So one for getting quadratic formula, another one for correct substitution, another one for correct answer. All right. So that are your first 2 problems. In the videos that follow, I will do the rest of the solutions for the worksheet. All right. God bless. Bye.